Mediocre is a harsh word, and as a remake of a 15-year-old PSP game, Crisis Core Reunion is just that. However, there are still a lot of positives here. Despite having an emotional and engaging story, with excellent characters and music, its failure to modernize and improve upon its source material left me disappointed. In this video, I'll break down how its outdated storytelling techniques let down the overall experience, how its confusing and segmented gameplay structure don't live up to modern expectations, and why the lack of clarity this game has in the Final Fantasy VII canon is unacceptable. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Taking place a few years before the events of Final Fantasy VII and/or Final Fantasy VII Remake, Crisis Core Reunion follows Zack Fair as he rises through the ranks of the Shinra Electric Power Company's elite soldier unit. His former colleagues and friends Genesis and Angeal have gone rogue, with Genesis making clones of himself with the assistance of a defecting scientist. With their dangerous influence growing, it's up to Zack and his uneasy alliance with Sephiroth to put a stop to Genesis's master plan. At the same time, Zack meets a young Aerith, and the two begin a brief courtship. Zack also draws the attention of a young infantryman, Cloud. Are you lost yet? I was when I played it. While I have played both Final Fantasy VII and VII Remake to completion, as well as having watched the Advent Children movie, as a casual fan of the franchise, I was admittedly quite confused at the beginning of the game. If you haven't played or interacted with any other piece of Final Fantasy VII media, you will be completely and utterly lost too. The story of this game hits the ground running, without any exposition or backstory about the world and characters. While this game is clearly designed with an audience of Final Fantasy VII fans in mind, a simple refresher for returning fans would have been nice. And this is just the first of many storytelling problems this game has. While the pre-rendered cutscenes and voice acting are of immensely high quality, and the script and narrative as a whole are ultimately satisfying at fleshing out the world of Final Fantasy VII, the way it's told, the fact that it adheres too close to its original version, as well as its problematic continuity with VII Remake make it a jumbled and confusing mess. The structure of the storytelling is absolute chaos. During battles, a bizarre roulette wheel is displayed at the top left corner at all times, and believe me, I will get to this more in the gameplay section. Sometimes a lucky RNG will trigger a flashback sequence, and this flashback sequence will usually happen while you're in the middle of setting up combos during a real-time battle. It interrupts your rhythm in an unacceptable way. It's like if someone were to yank out the power cord in the middle of your game. While these flashbacks give you some nice character moments and world building, it's a pain in the ass that they happen at the most inappropriate time, breaking your immersion in gameplay sections where you have to focus. I think this is because Square Enix wanted to adhere as closely as possible to the original PSP version. I have never played the PSP original, so I have no nostalgia for it at all. As this game was originally a handheld only title, the pick it up and put it down again nature of quick missions worked well for 2007, as did the novelty of a roulette wheel. But this is 2022, and this is a remake delivered at full price for home consoles. While the Switch version makes more sense as a portable one, it makes no sense on the PS5. You'll get to a point in the story where you can't progress and have to grind side missions for hours to level up. After you've grinded, enough time has passed that you won't remember your place in the story. Some of these side missions have story elements and some do not. Having the main story and side missions segmented this much gives no consistency, and it feels like by adhering too close to the original, they missed an opportunity to refine and improve the overall story structure. Doubling down on this is the fact that this was released after the brilliant Final Fantasy VII Remake. VII Remake took bold risks with its source material, overhauled its story, and told its story in a more modern and much better way than the original 7. Coming into Crisis Core after playing 7 Remake, the storytelling is a huge letdown. Yes, Crisis Core is just a prequel spin-off, and no, it doesn't have to be as epic or mind-blowing as 7 Remake, but in terms of quality, it should be higher than it is, closer to the levels of 7 Remake. The development team chose to keep Crisis Core closer to its original than take risks and make improvements, which in my opinion is unacceptable. And complicating this further, we have the issue of canon. Is this canon to the original or to 7 Remake? The official answer from Tetsuya Nomura is that it's canonical to both, which in my opinion further complicates things, and demonstrates a certain degree of laziness and lack of decisiveness behind the scenes. Beneath all these problems there is a good story, with some hilarious, charming and cathartic moments, but it's a damn shame that it's told the way it is. Overall, it feels like too much of a throwback, when a modernization would have been much better. You play as Zack Fair, this game's spiky-haired handsome boy with a big sword. He is a bit goofier and more positive than most of the dour Final Fantasy protagonists, and he's a delightful character to play as. His emotional character arc left a lasting impression on me, and he is perhaps now my most favourite Final Fantasy main character. This game justifies his importance in the overall Final Fantasy VII narrative. Aerith also plays a big role here, younger than her appearances in 7 and 7 Remake. She remains one of gaming's most enduring female characters, and gives some much needed calm and emotionality to a game filled with big boys and big swords. A younger Cloud shows up halfway into the game and experiences the important events that led to the formation of his character at the beginning of 7. Crisis Core shows his more vulnerable and human side and furthers his status as an iconic character in gaming. His appearance gives some much needed context to his and Zack's relationship, and this will no doubt be important in the upcoming 7 Rebirth. And my favourite character, Sephiroth, has a major role in the story. With Sephiroth being one of gaming's most iconic villains, his portrayal here is similarly excellent, with his more human side on display. Just how most media prequels show villains in a more empathetic light, Crisis Core is no exception, and adds more layers of tragedy to this iconic bad guy. You really feel his presence when he's on screen, and he remains the most interesting character in the entire Final Fantasy VII universe. The villains of the game, Angeal and Genesis, fail to make a strong impression on me. Perhaps this is because they don't appear in other Final Fantasy media I've played, and I found their motivations and backstory a bit cliched and uninteresting. The presence of the significantly more interesting Sephiroth undercuts their importance here, and they are the most uninteresting characters in the game. There's a lot of familiar faces from the media franchise here, offering fan service in spades. You can't help but smile at seeing these returning characters in their updated art style, as this game is definitely a treat for the Final Fantasy fandom, and all of its characters are brought to life better than ever before. Familiar Final Fantasy VII environments return, and are portrayed in the same style they were in 7 Remake. The designs are very aesthetically pleasing, with the dark and industrial city of Midgar, the tropical beach Costa del Sol, and the farmlands of the Chocobo Ranch all looking pretty, from a distance. Closer inspection of these environments reveals a lack of detail in places, with a lot of repeated topography, especially in side missions, and a lot of copy and pasted assets here and there. It's not a big deal being a remake of a PSP game, and the visual upgrade of the environments from PSP to modern consoles is huge. Yet, there's not as much quality here as there was in 7 Remake or other more recent games from Square Enix. It's always a joy to visit the top tier world of Final Fantasy VII, but your feelings towards them here in Crisis Core will depend on whether you think less detail is acceptable for a spin-off title, or a disservice to fans. In my opinion, I can look past a few flaws knowing that it's a spin-off title, and the disparity between the quality of 7 Remake and this game is not as big in its environments compared to other aspects of the game. This is a quintessential action RPG, in the vein of Kingdom Hearts, Xenoblade, and other more recent Final Fantasy games. During combat, you can attack, guard, heal, and use magic, and you have to assess the situation and plan your moves in real time. It's faster and more involved than turn-based RPGs, and plays like a simplified version of 7 Remake. Between battles, you'll walk from area to area, have random battle encounters, open a chest or two and interact with some NPCs, but this is not a game about exploration. This is a pared down and more concise Final Fantasy experience, being a remake of a PSP spin-off. While I've never played that PSP game, it's pretty clear that this game adheres to the gameplay of it. In my opinion, it sticks way too close to the original, to the detriment of the overall experience. First, the digital Mindwave wheel or roulette wheel that spins while battling. It randomly gives you buffs and access to powerful moves based on RNG. This is an incredibly bonkers concept. I think in 2007 it made sense as a handheld game novelty, but in 2022 it's nonsensical. It's barely explained how it actually works, and some decisive battles in the game will be won solely thanks to RNG, when the roulette wheel isn't interrupting your gameplay with momentum-killing story flashbacks. Next, the experience point system. While Zack does level up as this game progresses, there is no experience point meter shown anywhere in the UI. Furthermore, the game never tells you how to level up, or which missions award you more XP or anything that would help you. Furthermore, this leveling up is linked to that roulette wheel. After playing enough, I realized that by grinding battles he will level up like any other RPG character, but the way progression is handled here is nothing short of baffling. And finally, the segmented structure of the game. Once I reached Chapter 5, the boss of that chapter was insanely higher than any previous enemy, and I realized I'd reached a difficulty spike. To get strong enough, I grinded the so-called optional side missions to level up and get new gear. It was here I realized the inconsistent difficulty is not exclusive to the story, but here too. Each mission has a star ranking for how difficult it is, but these are entirely meaningless. I would go into some missions and easily destroy every enemy, and others where I'd be one-shot killed right at the beginning. And yet, these missions had the same difficulty ranking. How to beat some of them is tied to what equipment or materia you start with. And like XP and the roulette wheel, materia is another complicated system that's not explained to you, and you have to figure it out on your own or by using guides from the internet. I would really only complete missions by spamming strong magic attacks, or just skip them if they required some other complicated loadout. I realize that's a lot of negativity, but not all of it was negative. I did have fun with the missions and battles, and found them quite addictive, and I got a lot of joy out of using the right move at a clutch moment when my HP was low. I do love this genre, and fans of the genre will have a lot of fun here. However, the dated structure from 2007 and weird and confusing gameplay mechanics prevent it from being a stellar experience. As someone with no nostalgia for the original hoping for a high quality experience closer to newer games, I was truly disappointed. Just like the story, Square Enix missed an opportunity to update and modernize the gameplay experience. If you want a nostalgic experience, you'll have the time of your life. Just don't expect to find boundary-pushing modern gameplay here. I played the Switch version, which ran great in both handheld and docked. Compared to the PlayStation version, it has a slower but still consistent frame rate, and you do lose some background details as well as some facial animations. Still, animations were smooth and pretty, comparable to something like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I've looked at playthroughs of the PS5 one, and it does look pretty good. Overall though, this game has taken a graphical downgrade from VII Remake and VII Remake into grade. But given the lower stakes and quality, the console version you choose shouldn't matter too much. I can recommend the Switch version, as it is fun in handheld, especially given the pick it up and put it down nature of missions. And if you're nostalgic for the PSP one, then handheld is the way to go. Music is fantastic throughout. The original game soundtrack has been redone for Reunion, and the glow-up is considerable. There's a good mix of sweeping orchestrated sections and up-tempo guitar-laden heavy metal fight songs. Most fan-favorite Final Fantasy VII themes are here, with standout tracks like Let the Battles Begin and Fight On giving punchy motivation during epic battles, and Aerith's theme and One-Winged Angel underscoring the emotional character moments. It's a treat to hear these enduring themes back again. Final Fantasy music has always been of high quality, and Crisis Core is no exception. Voice acting is great here, with the new cast from VII Remake returning to their roles. Despite the cheesiness of the dialogue, the voice actors do well with what they've been given. The actors behind Zack and Aerith are particular standouts, with their courting scenes being the emotional highlight of the game. I give credit to Square Enix for maintaining musical and vocal consistency in the post-VII Remake era of the franchise. Music and voice acting are the most improved aspects of this remake, a huge leap forward from the PSP version. Despite having a lot of fun, I was disappointed with Crisis Core Reunion on the whole. It doesn't justify being a full-priced game, being a downgrade from previous media in the franchise. This raises an interesting debate. Whether you think it's worth your time and money is dependent on the following two questions. Question 1. Which is more important for a remake? Sticking as close as possible to the original, or modernizing into something new? For me, it's the latter, and the excellent VII Remake already established a precedent for doing so. And Question 2. Should a spin-off's quality be as high as a mainline entry? For me, it's quality story and gameplay that answer that question, and as a standalone product, Crisis Core Reunions are decent, but compared to the mainline series, they are just not good enough. As it's a straight remake and not as high quality as the mainline series, I don't think it's worth the full price at launch. And if you're not already familiar with the Final Fantasy series, this is definitely not a great place to start. If you're curious about the game, you will still have a good time, but I'd wait for it to go on sale and see if you can find a used copy. So, what are your opinions on spin-offs and remakes? And have you played Crisis Core Reunion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and I'll be replying to every one of them. And if you'd like to see more game reviews like this, don't forget to drop a like for the algorithm and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I'll see you next time.